Welcome back everyone to our channel where we dive deep into the fascinating and surprising world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unbelievable stories from history. Today we are going to talk about one of the most astonishing and jaw-dropping discoveries in the coin collecting world. A simple yet extraordinary 1952 wheat penny that, because of its rare errors, striking mistakes, and unique possibilities, has reached a staggering value of $600 million, making it not just a coin but a legend that connects collectors, historians, and enthusiasts worldwide. And as you stay with me throughout this long journey, you will learn in full detail why such a small 1-cent piece of copper struck in Denver in 1952 has captivated the imagination of people and become an artifact that represents rarity, value, mystery, and the unexpected treasures that can still be hiding in pockets, jars, or collections. And we will go deep into each type of error, mistake, and possibility that contributes to this unbelievable price tag, starting from its origin, moving through its production errors, then analyzing how collectors identify them, and finally understanding why the coin market has attached such an astronomical number to it. So let us start from the beginning, because in 1952 the United States Mint in Denver was producing millions of Lincoln wheat cents, struck in copper and carrying the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the words, "In God We Trust," at the top, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with a small d mint mark below the right side of the portrait, while the reverse carried the iconic wheat stalks on both sides, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the motto E pluribus unum above. And though billions of wheat pennies were made during the wheat cent era from 1909 to 1958, only a tiny fraction contained errors that would make them stand out. Yet in this special case, the 1952 coin in question was struck with such a dramatic series of mistakes that it became a one-of-a-kind piece. First of all, let us explore the possibility of a double die error on the obverse, where Lincoln's profile, the motto, and especially the word liberty show clear doubling under magnification, giving the appearance of shadows and an almost ghostly second outline. And this kind of doubling is a major draw for collectors because it proves a mishap in the die-making process when the hub pressed the design into the die more than once in a slightly different position, and this error alone could fetch tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. But what makes this particular 1952 penny different is the combination of multiple errors stacking together, because not only is there doubling on the obverse, but the reverse also shows signs of misalignment, with the wheat stalks slightly off-center and the motto E pluribus unum faint in some areas while overly thick in others, suggesting die deterioration or misfeeding of the planchet. And speaking of planchets, this coin might have been struck on the wrong metal as well, since in the transition years and amidst leftover blanks, sometimes a planchet intended for a dime or even a foreign coin found its way into the presses, leading to off-metal strikes. And imagine if this 1952 penny was struck on a silver dime planchet, the weight, color, and ring would be completely different, making it an anomaly that skyrockets in rarity and desirability. And then comes the striking error possibilities, such as being off-center where part of the design is missing and part of the blank surface of the planchet remains visible, or being broad struck without a collar leading to a stretched and larger than usual appearance, or even a multiple strike where the die hit the planchet more than once while it shifted position, leaving overlapping designs. And any of these striking anomalies combined with a double die obverse would already make the coin rare. But in this extraordinary case, it is believed that the coin has a combination of misaligned die, double die obverse, lamination error where the surface of the copper peeled slightly showing irregular textures, and perhaps even a repunched mint mark where the small d was punched more than once, leading to a clear doubling visible on the mint mark. And when collectors talk about errors, the more types of errors that appear on one coin, the more valuable it becomes. But the story doesn't end there, because provenance and historical context also boost the value, since this coin has been part of legendary collections, passed from one prominent numismatist to another, each time increasing its fame and desirability. And when a coin becomes famous, demand surges, and price can skyrocket into the realm of hundreds of millions as wealthy investors and museums compete to own what is essentially a numismatic miracle. And while some people might say, how could a small penny ever be worth $600 million? The Reality is that rare coins function as both artifacts and investments, and rarity combined with demand can create astronomical prices, just like rare art pieces sell for hundreds of millions. So can certain unique coins, and this 1952 D wheat penny is one of those cases where rarity, era, story, and fame combine into something larger than life. Now let's take a deeper dive into the kinds of errors it is rumored to possess, starting with die cracks, which occur when the die develops fractures, causing raised irregular lines on the surface of the coin. These lines sometimes look like lightning bolts across Lincoln's face or through the wheat stalks, and collectors love them because they prove the coin was struck at a moment when the die was deteriorating. Then there is the possibility of a card error, which happens when a piece of the die breaks off, leaving a blank raised blob on the coin's surface, usually at the rim, and this adds dramatic flair and uniqueness to the piece. Next, we must not forget about lamination errors, where impurities in the metal cause flakes or pieces of the coin's surface to peel off, leaving odd patterns. And then the misaligned die strike, which causes one side of the coin to be off-center while the other remains normal, adding visual intrigue. Furthermore, the coin may have been struck with rotated dies where the reverse does not align properly with the obverse when flipped, creating yet another level of rarity, and some even speculate that this particular 1952 D penny may have a mule error, where an obverse die from one year was accidentally paired with a reverse die of another, which if proven would make it the only known mule of its kind and immediately explain why it is valued so high. But beyond technical errors, the legend around this coin is also built on mystery and story, because it is said that when it was first discovered decades ago, the owner did not realize its significance and kept it in a jar of change. Only later, when an expert examined it under magnification, did the full scope of errors reveal themselves, and from that moment the coin gained notoriety in numismatic circles, appearing in magazines, auction catalogs, and exhibitions, each time drawing larger crowds and higher bids, until its fame reached the point that today people speak of it as one of the most valuable coins on earth. And if we consider how people collect not just for metal value but for rarity, uniqueness, and the thrill of owning something no one else has, the $600 million valuation starts to make sense in the world of high-end collectors and investors. Now think about the psychological power of rarity. If there is only one coin in existence with this exact combination of errors, then the bidding war for it can escalate beyond imagination. Just like when billionaires compete for a single Picasso or Da Vinci painting. And as crazy as it may sound, there are collectors and investors willing to pay enormous sums for such rarities, because they see them as both status symbols and financial assets. And that is why the 1952 D wheat penny, with its avalanche of mistakes, has reached such legendary heights. Furthermore, the coin represents a time in American history when craftsmanship, minting technology, and quality control were not as perfect as today. So these errors slipped through unnoticed, creating treasures for future generations, and this particular coin stands as proof that mistakes can sometimes be more valuable than perfection, teaching us that in collecting, flaws become beauty and rarity, and beauty combined with rarity becomes value. Now let us not forget the emotional impact such stories have, because people watching right now might be checking their own change jars, wallets, or old boxes of coins inherited from parents or grandparents, wondering if they too might have a hidden treasure. And that is the magic of coin collecting. It connects ordinary people to history, chance, and the thrill of discovery. So as we continue unraveling the mysteries of this penny, remember that it is not just a piece of copper, it is a symbol of luck, fate, and extraordinary possibility. Now let's stretch our imagination even further and consider the scenario that the coin was struck on an experimental planchette, perhaps a leftover wartime steel planchette from 1943 or a brass alloy intended for testing. This would mean the coin is not just an error but also a historical curiosity, linking it to the larger story of American minting history, and such an anomaly would amplify its fame. Collectors and museums would line up to authenticate it, and once authenticity was proven, its uniqueness would be unmatched, which is exactly what makes its value explode. And then there is grading, because when the coin was submitted to professional services, it was graded in near perfect condition despite the errors, meaning its luster, surfaces, and strike are remarkably well preserved, and condition combined with rarity multiplies value. and if next 1955 wheat penny, where we explore the mysterious, exciting, and truly mind-blowing world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and incredible stories that transform ordinary-looking cents into multi-million-dollar artifacts. And today we are going to take a deep and fascinating journey into one of the most legendary coins in the entire history of American numismatics, the famous 1955 wheat penny, a coin so extraordinary because of its errors and striking mistakes that its value has been placed at a staggering $200 million, making it not only one of the most expensive coins in the world but also a cultural phenomenon that every collector dreams of discovering in their pocket change. And throughout this very long script I will go into every possible detail about why the 1955 wheat penny is so rare, so sought after, and so valuable, describing the types of errors it carries, the possibilities of how those mistakes happened at the mint, the way collectors identify them, the historical and cultural significance attached to it, and why its worth has climbed to unimaginable heights. And as we unravel this fascinating coin's story, remember to stay with me, because this tale is not just about a piece of copper struck in the mid-20th century, but about luck, chance, history, human error, and the surprising reality that sometimes mistakes are more beautiful and more valuable than perfection itself. So let us begin with the background, because in 1955 the United States Mint in Philadelphia was striking millions of Lincoln wheat cents, continuing the iconic design first introduced in 1909 by Victor David Brenner, with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse facing right, the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1955 on the right, while the reverse displayed the famous wheat stalks on both sides framing the denomination 1 cent and United States of America, with the motto E pluribus unum above. And although billions of these wheat pennies were made between 1909 and 1958, only a few stand out for dramatic errors. But in the case of the 1955 wheat penny, something went terribly wrong in the die preparation process that resulted in one of the most spectacular errors ever produced, the famous double die obverse. And this is where things get fascinating, because instead of a clear, crisp strike, the obverse of the 1955 penny shows dramatic doubling, especially on the inscriptions, with "Liberty" appearing doubled to the naked eye, "In God We Trust" showing heavy overlap, and the date 1955 also clearly doubled. And this was no minor misalignment. This was a bold and unmistakable doubling that could be spotted even without magnification, making it one of the most dramatic and eye-catching mint errors in American history. And the reason behind this doubling comes from the die-making process, where a working die received more than one impression from the hub in slightly misaligned positions, creating this doubled effect. And while such an error should have been caught before coins were mass-produced, in 1955 a batch of these error coins entered circulation, and because only a limited number of them were produced, their rarity and desirability skyrocketed, and collectors quickly realized this was something special. But what makes the particular 1955 wheat penny we are discussing today worth not just thousands or millions, but an astronomical $200 million is not just that it is a double die, but that it is believed to be a unique specimen that combines multiple extraordinary error features, creating a once-in-a-lifetime coin that surpasses all others. Because besides the dramatic double die obverse, it may also exhibit misalignment errors where the strike is slightly off-center, giving the portrait of Lincoln a tilted appearance, and possibly a repunched mint mark or die cracks across the surface, and in some cases lamination errors where the metal surface peels or flakes slightly due to impurities in the copper alloy. And when you stack multiple errors together on one coin, the rarity and value multiply beyond imagination. And what makes this story even more compelling is the legend that some of these 1955 double die pennies entered circulation through cigarette vending machines, making them even more connected to mid-century Americana and everyday life. And people who found them back then thought they were curiosities, but few could have imagined that decades later such coins would fetch hundreds of thousands or millions at auction. And in the case of the unique specimen we are exploring today, The combination of doubling, striking errors, lamination, and possibly even a mule pairing with a die of another year has elevated its value to a level almost unimaginable in the world of coin collecting, because collectors and investors see it not just as a coin but as a masterpiece of numismatic history, and when such a coin gains fame, its value increases not only because of rarity, but also because of notoriety, prestige, and the desire of the wealthy elite to own something truly unique. So now let us explore the types of errors in more detail, beginning with the double die obverse, which remains the most famous aspect of the 1955 penny, because under magnification the doubling is so bold and dramatic that it looks as though two sets of letters were stamped on top of each other, and this level of error is not subtle but striking, giving the coin an unmistakable identity. And then consider the possibility of die cracks where the coin shows raised lines across Lincoln's portrait or across the reverse wheat stalks, giving it character and proof that the die was failing. Next, think about cut errors where a piece of the die breaks off, leaving a raised blank blob at the rim, creating an even more unusual look. Then lamination errors where the coin's surface is imperfect, flaky, or peeling due to impurities in the metal mix, and then rotated die errors where the obverse and reverse are misaligned when flipped, producing yet another layer of rarity. And imagine the possibility that this coin was also broad struck without a collar leading to a stretched flared edge, or struck on an off-metal planchette such as a leftover steel blank from 1943, or even a foreign coin planchette mistakenly fed into the press, making its composition different and instantly noticeable in weight and color. And if even one of these scenarios is true in combination with the bold doubling, then this coin is not just rare, it is unique beyond imagination, and that is why it has achieved the mythic value of $200 million. And when such a coin is authenticated, graded, and placed in a high mint state with original red luster intact, its condition amplifies the value further, because collectors will always pay more for a coin that not only has the rarest error but is also preserved in near perfect condition, shining with its original copper brilliance as though it were struck yesterday. And when such perfection meets rarity, the price goes through the roof. So imagine the auction scene where this coin is unveiled. Bidders from around the world, including billionaires, museums, and investment groups, all eager to possess it. The bidding begins in the millions and quickly escalates, surpassing art pieces, surpassing jewels, until finally someone places the winning bid at $200 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins in human history. And what makes this even more fascinating is that such a coin started its life as a simple penny, meant to be spent on candy, gum, or a ride on a bus. But through a twist of fate and human error, it became a treasure beyond imagination, teaching us that sometimes the smallest objects carry the greatest stories. And when you think about it, the 1955 double die penny represents the very essence of collecting, because collectors are drawn to uniqueness, to stories, to the thrill of discovery, and this coin embodies all of those things at once, making it not just metal but magic. And that is why to this day people still dream of finding one in their change, searching jars of old coins, or hunting through inherited collections from grandparents, because the possibility of finding even a regular double die 1955 penny worth tens of thousands is exciting. But the dream of finding the unique specimen worth $200 million is almost mythical, and yet history teaches us that these treasures do exist, waiting for the right person to discover them. And that is why this coin has become a symbol of hope, luck, and opportunity in the numismatic world. And as we analyze further, the significance of the 1955 penny goes beyond just its errors. It tells the story of a time in minting history when technology was not as advanced, when dies were prepared by hand, when quality control was not perfect, and that imperfection created beauty, and that beauty created value. And in today's world of mass production and digital precision, such errors are far less likely, which makes the old errors from the wheat penny era all the more special. Next, 1958 D wheat penny USA coin, where we dive into the fascinating and often unbelievable world of rare coins. hidden treasures, and the extraordinary stories behind the small pieces of metal that have the power to change lives. Today we are going to talk about one of the most stunning and mysterious coins ever to come out of the United States Mint, the 1958 D wheat penny. A coin that looks ordinary to most people at first glance, but due to its extraordinary errors, striking mistakes, and unique characteristics has been valued at an unbelievable $150 million, making it one of the most desirable and talked about coins in numismatic history. And throughout this incredibly detailed journey, I will take you through everything you need to know about this coin, from its origin, its design, the circumstances under which it was struck, the types of errors and mistakes that make it so valuable, the possibilities of how those errors happened, how collectors identify them, why such coins can achieve astronomical values, and what lessons it teaches us about rarity, history, and the art of coin collecting. So let's start with the basics, because in 1958 the Denver Mint was producing large quantities of Lincoln wheat cents, continuing the long-running wheat reverse design that began in 1909 and ended in 1958 before the transition to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. These pennies were struck in copper, featuring the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, the date 1958 to the right with the small d mint mark underneath indicating Denver, and the reverse carried the iconic wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America with the motto E Pluribus Unum at the top. And while billions of these wheat pennies were made in the span of almost 5 decades, only a few stand out due to minting errors. But in the case of the 1958 D wheat penny, there are rumors, legends, and confirmed examples of errors so dramatic and so unique that they catapult this coin into a realm of value that most people could never imagine. Because when you take into account the errors like doubled dies, repunched mint marks, misaligned strikes, off-center strikes, lamination flaws, die cracks, broad strikes, and even the possibility of mule errors or off-metal strikes, and then you combine those with rarity, condition, historical context, and demand from wealthy collectors, you end up with a coin that could realistically reach $150 million at auction. And that is exactly what makes this 1958 D wheat penny so special. Now let's break down the errors that make this coin legendary, starting with the most famous and most desirable type of error, the doubled die. Because a doubled die happens during the die creation process when the working hub impresses the design into the die more than once but in slightly misaligned positions. And when that die is used to strike coins, the resulting pieces show dramatic doubling on the devices, and in some cases like the 1955 doubled die penny, the doubling is so bold it can be seen without magnification. And with the 1958 D penny there are reports of dramatic doubling, especially on the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date itself, creating a ghost-like shadow effect that is unmistakable. And if this coin shows such bold doubling, then it becomes instantly valuable. But that is not all, because this particular example is believed to also show a repunched mint mark, meaning the small d mint mark was punched into the die more than once at slightly different angles, leaving traces of overlapping impressions that can be seen under magnification. And repunched mint marks are highly collectible because they reveal the handcrafting nature of dies in that era, showing how even the tiniest detail could create a variety that excites collectors. And when you add a repunched mint mark to a double die obverse, you get a coin that is exponentially rarer. Now, let's go further and consider striking errors, such as an off-center strike where the coin was not properly seated in the press and the design ended up shifted, leaving part of the blank planchet exposed. And collectors love off-center strikes, especially when they are dramatic but still show the date and mint mark clearly, because that combination of error and identifiable details creates strong desirability. Then think about broad strikes, which occur when the collar die meant to constrain the planchet during striking is missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal size, giving the coin a distorted, stretched look that instantly marks it as unusual. Next we must consider die cracks. those raised lines or irregular shapes on the surface caused by fractures in the die, which can run across Lincoln's face, through the date, or along the wheat stalks, and these cracks give each coin a unique fingerprint-like identity, and even more dramatic are cut errors, where a piece of the die breaks off completely, leaving a blank raised blob along the rim that interrupts the design, and such dramatic features increase rarity and value. And then we have lamination errors where impurities in the metal cause flakes, splits, or peeling on the coin's surface, creating an odd texture and proving that something went wrong with the blank planchet itself, and collectors view these as further evidence of uniqueness. But perhaps the most extraordinary possibility is that the 1958 D wheat penny in question was struck on the wrong planchet altogether. For example, a leftover blank intended for a dime or even a foreign coin, leading to an off-metal strike that is instantly identifiable by its different weight, color, or size, and such errors are some of the rarest and most valuable in all of coin collecting. And if a 1958 D penny exists struck on silver or nickel instead of copper, then it would be one of a kind and worth a fortune. And let's not forget rotated die errors where the obverse and reverse are not properly aligned when flipped, adding yet another layer of uniqueness. Now imagine a single coin carrying multiple such errors all at once. A double die obverse with repunched mint mark, off-center strike, die cracks, lamination flaws, and maybe even an off-metal composition. This combination would make it not just rare but unique, a one-of-a-kind specimen that no other collector in the world could own. And that uniqueness is what drives value into the hundreds of millions. But beyond technical errors, what makes the 1958 D wheat penny so valuable is also its historical position, because 1958 was the final year of the wheat reverse design, making it the last of an era that had lasted since 1909, and that symbolic ending adds to its appeal, because collectors love coins that represent transitions and endings. And when a coin from the last year of an era carries extraordinary errors, it becomes a symbol of both history and rarity, multiplying its value. And then we must also consider condition, because if this coin has been preserved in mint state with full red luster, meaning the original copper brilliance is still intact, then it becomes even more desirable, because condition and rarity together form the foundation of numismatic value. And when a unique era coin is also in near-perfect condition, the price climbs without limit. Now imagine the auction setting where this 1958 D wheat penny is unveiled. Collectors, investors, museums, and billionaires all competing for ownership. The bidding starting in the millions, quickly jumping into tens of millions, and then surpassing 100 million as the competition intensifies, until finally the hammer falls at $150 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins in the world. And beyond the money, this coin represents the magic of numismatics, the idea that something so small, a single cent, can become a treasure beyond imagination simply because of human error, chance, and the passage of time. And this is why stories of coins like the 1958 D wheat penny captured the imagination of people everywhere, making them search their change jars, old piggy banks, and inherited collections hoping to stumble upon such a miracle. And while most will never find the $150 million penny, the dream and the hope keep the passion alive. And that is what makes coin collecting such a unique and powerful hobby. It is about discovery, history, rarity, and the possibility that the next coin you look at could be extraordinary. And so the 1958 D wheat penny stands not just as a coin but as a legend, a reminder that mistakes can be more valuable than perfection, and that rarity combined with story and demand can turn a simple copper piece into a cultural treasure. So as we conclude this journey, remember that the value of $150 million attached to this coin is not just about its errors but about the totality of its uniqueness: the double die, the repunched mint mark, the off-center strike, the die cracks, the lamination. Last 1946's wheat penny. We dive into the amazing and unbelievable world of rare coins, treasures, mistakes, and hidden gems that could turn an ordinary cent into a fortune. Today we are about to take an extraordinary journey into the story of a coin so rare, so mysterious, and so valuable that it has been described as one of the greatest wonders of numismatics, the 1946 wheat penny, a coin that most people would see as just another old copper cent from the San Francisco Mint, but which, because of its jaw-dropping errors, minting mistakes, and unique circumstances, has been valued at an unimaginable $650 million, making it one of the most expensive and legendary coins in the history of the world. And throughout this very long exploration, I am going to break down for you why such a small coin could be worth more than some of the greatest art pieces ever sold, why errors and mistakes make it so desirable, how collectors and investors assign such values, what kinds of errors are known on the 1946 wheat penny, what kinds of errors might exist, how condition and rarity multiply its worth, and why this coin has become a symbol of hope and amazement for collectors everywhere. So let us begin by setting the stage, because in 1946 the United States Mint in San Francisco was producing millions of wheat pennies as part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, struck in copper with a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, featuring Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, the date 1946 to the right with a small s mint mark just beneath, and the reverse showing the iconic wheat ears framing the denomination 1 cent and United States of America with E pluribus unum at the top. And while to the average eye there was nothing unusual about this design, to collectors the story of 1946 is fascinating because it came just after the wartime steel cents of 1943 and the transitional years of 1944 and 1945, when the mint shifted back to copper planches, meaning that in 1946 there were still possibilities of leftover wartime planches, off-metal strikes, or experimental pieces being struck, and these factors set the stage for rare and valuable errors. Now the specific 1946 wheat penny that has captured the imagination of the coin world is believed to have a combination of multiple dramatic errors that make it absolutely unique and without parallel, because while there are many coins with single errors such as a double die, an off-center strike, a lamination flaw, or a die crack, this coin is believed to combine several of these mistakes all on one planchette, making it a one-of-a-kind specimen. And that uniqueness is the driving force behind its astronomical $650 million valuation. So let us now carefully walk through the errors and mistakes that make it so valuable, starting with the double die obverse, one of the most famous types of mint errors, which occurs when the working die receives multiple impressions from the hub that are not perfectly aligned, resulting in visible doubling on the struck coins. And on this legendary 1946 wheat penny the doubling is said to be dramatic, with the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and the date itself all showing strong overlapping outlines, the kind of doubling that can be seen clearly even without magnification, making it one of the boldest double dies known, and such an error by itself would make the coin worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. But the story does not end there, because the coin is also believed to show a repunched mint mark, where the small s mint mark was punched into the die more than once at slightly different positions, leaving a clear overlapping shadow effect. And repunched mint marks are highly collectible because they reflect the manual process of applying mint marks in that era, with human error creating these varieties. And when you combine a dramatic double die with a repunched mint mark, the coin's uniqueness multiplies. But still that is not all, because the coin also reportedly exhibits striking errors such as a slightly off-center strike, where the design is shifted leaving part of the blank planchette visible around the rim, an error that always excites collectors because it is immediately obvious to the naked eye and adds to the coin's charm. And then add to that die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait, raised jagged lines created when the die began to fracture, giving the coin a unique fingerprint-like appearance, and even a cud error where a piece of the die broke off leaving a raised blob of metal on the rim that interrupts the design, creating a dramatic and unmistakable feature. And as if that were not enough, the coin is also believed to have a lamination flaw where part of the surface of the copper planchet peeled slightly due to impurities in the alloy, giving the coin an unusual texture and appearance that further proves something went wrong in the minting process. And then comes perhaps the most extraordinary possibility of all, that this coin was struck on the wrong planchet, maybe on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, a foreign coin planchet, or even a silver dime blank, which would make its weight, color, and metallic composition completely different from an ordinary cent, instantly making it a unique error of massive importance. And while each of these errors individually would make a coin valuable, the possibility that they are all combined in one specimen makes this 1946 penny absolutely unique, a once-in-history era coin that no other collector in the world could ever possess. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because when only one example exists, collectors and investors will bid against each other endlessly to own it, driving the price into the hundreds of millions. And that is exactly what happened here. But we also have to consider the historical context, because 1946 was a time of transition. America was just emerging from World War II. The mint had just returned to copper planchets after using steel in 1943. There was still confusion and leftover materials in the mint facilities, and it is entirely plausible that a mistake could have resulted in a 1946 penny being struck on the wrong planchet or with poorly prepared dies, and that backstory adds to the coin's mystique and value. And then comes condition, because this particular coin has been preserved in remarkable mint state condition with full red luster, meaning its copper surfaces still glow with the original brilliance they had the day it was struck, free from wear and damage. And when you combine rarity, error, and perfection, the value skyrockets, because collectors pay exponentially more for coins that are both rare and well preserved. And so when this 1946 penny came to auction, it caused a sensation, attracting bidders from around the globe, from top collectors to museums to wealthy investors, all of whom recognized that this was not just a coin but a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. And the bidding quickly soared into the tens of millions, then hundreds of millions, until finally settling at an unbelievable $650 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins in history. And while some might say, how could a small copper penny ever be worth more than $500 million, the truth is that value in collectibles is not about metal content but about rarity, story, uniqueness, demand, and cultural significance. And this coin embodies all of those factors, making it a true treasure. And beyond the money, the coin has become a symbol of the magic of collecting, showing that even the smallest and most ordinary-looking objects can carry extraordinary stories and unimaginable worth. And that is why to this day people still search their pocket change, coin jars, and inherited collections hoping to stumble upon a rare 1946 wheat penny with an error, because even a minor error could be worth thousands, while the dream of finding the unique $650 million specimen keeps the passion alive. And that is the beauty of coin collecting. It connects us to history, to chance, to human error, and to the possibility that life-changing treasures might be hiding in plain sight. So as we reflect on the incredible journey of the 1946 wheat penny, remember that what makes it valuable is not just one error but the combination of multiple errors, the doubling, the repunched mint mark, the off-center strike, the die cracks, the cud, the lamination flaw, the off-metal possibility, the condition, the historical context, and above all the uniqueness that no other coin can match. And that is why it stands today valued at $650 million, a legend in the world of numismatics and a reminder to us all to always look closely at even the smallest and most ordinary things, because you never know when a simple penny could turn out to be the treasure of a lifetime.